Hey, what up folks? It's Alex here, and yes, things are changing pretty dramatically in the world of Windows and PCs, literally right now. And it's going to give all of you Windows users of Davinci Resolve a whole lot more choice and a whole lot more efficiency. So let's just backtrack a little bit. Traditionally, Windows laptops and Windows PCs use the x86 architecture, which, very long story short, means you've got a dedicated CPU, a dedicated GPU, and then you've got RAM, and they're all separate, but they all kind of talk together and communicate in a very particular way, that sort of thing. It's worked, it's been the same for years, it can be very, very powerful, but it can also be quite power hungry. That's how MacBooks used to work when they were Intel, but then Apple introduced Apple Silicon, which is what's called an SoC, which is a system on chip. And all that means that basically all of that separate stuff is all packaged onto a single chip, hence system on a chip. And the Apple MacBooks run on something called ARM. And you combine all of that, you get really quite good performance while also being able to remain cool and efficient. Your mobile phone works in a very similar way, whether you're on Apple or whether you're on Android. And actually, a lot of the high-end Android phones use a Snapdragon processor by a company called Qualcomm. And that, my friends, is where things start to get a little bit interesting. You see, Qualcomm have just introduced an ARM-based system on a chip. I'm going to call it a processor or a CPU because it's just easier. But Qualcomm have just introduced an ARM-based CPU for Windows. It's called the Snapdragon X. There's two versions. There's a lower powered, cheaper one called the X Plus, and then there's the more powerful X Elite. Now, this actually isn't the first time they've tried this. Microsoft, Windows, this is a Microsoft Surface X. This runs on ARM, but it was quite underpowered. It wasn't great. Battery life and stuff was good, but it was kind of undercooked. This time around, it looks like they're really doing it properly. Microsoft have just done a big announcement. They're switching all of their Microsoft Surface lines over to this Snapdragon CPU, and there's loads of other manufacturers of Windows devices that are doing the same thing. And we've got things like Dell, Asus, and Lenovo. And if you have a look, all of these are their super thin portable laptops, like the VivoBooks, the Yogas, the Galaxy Books, and all that sort of thing. Now, unfortunately, we don't actually have a huge amount of information yet in terms of actual raw performance. During the recent Microsoft event, they threw up some really generic slides with generic performance things like 23 more peak multi-threading performance than the MacBook Air M3 and up to 58% more sustained multi-threading performance, all with apparently 20% more battery life than the Air as well. But why am I telling you? Why do I think that you Davinci Resolve nerds like me are going to care? Well, there's the obvious thing, new devices, Windows, yada, yada, yada. The problem with ARM, especially on Windows, the reason they struggled with it last time, is you need all the apps to run specifically on ARM. But a while ago, they did confirm that Davinci Resolve will be a native ARM app. So Davinci Resolve is going to be built specifically to run on all of these new devices. And they even used it in some of the earlier promo material. Now, there's very little information out there. There's very little hands-on. I found this. This is an article from the Laptop Mag. He's tried Davinci Resolve on a laptop powered by the Snapdragon X Elite. He goes on to say that it runs beautifully. It's smooth. It's smoother than on most MacBook Airs and lower spec MacBook Pro M3s, which all sounds quite tasty. But what's also interesting about these new Snapdragon CPUs is that they also have an integrated NPU. So many acronyms. An NPU is a neural processing unit, and basically it's a dedicated little unit designed specifically for accelerating AI and machine learning processes. So basically, in theory, what they can do is they can delegate the AI-based features of Davinci Resolve to run specifically on the NPU. And once upon a time, they actually uploaded this video to YouTube as part of the whole promotional thing, and it's a Snapdragon demo, AI accelerated video editing. And this is showing Magic Masks running at 9 frames per second. Again, there's no information. We don't know the project. We don't know the frame rate. We don't know the format. We don't know anything. It's comparing it against an Intel equivalent, and it's running much, much quicker. But again, in terms of benchmarks, we don't really know how quick that is, but it does seem to be quite promising. Now, it's quite funny, actually. I heard about this. I heard kind of the rumors, the talks, and all that sort of thing last November. So I sneakily sent Qualcomm a bit of an email trying to introduce myself and big myself up and say, can I get involved and have a play and, you know, talk to me, send me some stuff. I like Resolve, and you're talking about Resolve. And they ignored me completely. So I didn't get anywhere with that. Since then, I've been also pestering them on Instagram, and they've ignored me there too. So alas, they do not like me. I do not have any access, but I will keep pestering and I will see what I can do. But what does that all mean? Why am I rambling on? Well, it just means that we're going to get thin and light laptops that don't need loads of cooling and don't need loads of power to run Davinci Resolve really quite efficiently. Something else really interesting I read, and I don't have a huge amount of information on this, but technically, there's nothing stopping these systems, these Snapdragon X Elites and the X Pluses, these CPUs, being paired with full fat GPUs as well. So that, to me, is super intriguing. You can get a super efficient device capable of editing for hours and hours on the go, but then when you plug it into the wall, the GPU kicks in, and then you've got a good, powerful GPU to do even more heavy lifting, which sounds like a bit of a dream combo. And we've started to have some pricing popping up. The Surface line is always on the higher end of the pricing for these Windows-style devices. And you can get the Snapdragon X Elite model, 16GB of RAM, 512GB SSD, and an OLED display, which is also new. And that's available for $1,499, which is the exact same as the equivalent iPad Pro. Some of the other alternatives will almost certainly be cheaper. I have found the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7X listed online for $1,199. So again, thinner, lighter, more efficient, capable of running Davinci Resolve, and I don't want to say cheap, but in today's world with laptops, relatively affordable. And I just think that's super cool. More options is always a good thing. I could not care less which side of the fence you're on when it comes to Apple and Microsoft and all this. Argue in the comments if you want, but I honestly do not care. More choice for people like you and me is just always a good thing. So that's why I wanted to hop on and just tell you all about it. I think it's pretty cool. I like the fact that there's some changes coming. I think more choice is always a good thing, and I can't wait to see what happens. We haven't actually heard anything from Blackmagic about this. It's just been announced from Snapdragon, from Qualcomm and all that sort of thing. But fingers crossed we get some more information from Blackmagic soon. And as soon as we do, if I hear anything, I'll be sure to let you know. I will also keep pestering manufacturers and Qualcomm and everyone else to let me have a play with one so I can report back directly. Anyway, that's it. That's the news. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Bye.